Welcome to Birdsong with your host, Kayuta Kiora, exploring all things related to the path of shamanism, nature-based spirituality, truth-seeking, storytelling, awakening, health and wellness, earth-honoring traditions, ceremony, ritual, rites of passage, and of course, a remembering of the sacred ways. Hey everyone, it's Caillou here. Welcome to another episode of Birdsong. And in this particular episode, we have Adam Kavanagh joining us. Adam is an adventurer who seeks out wisdom from many different nature-based cultures around the globe, in particular through the powerful way of living and breathing, which is commonly known as rewilding. So we're talking living and surviving out in nature, out off the land. And part of Adam's backstory is that he worked as a coal miner for 9 years, and as you might expect, there's going to be some level of physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual exhaustion to be suffered, which became apparent for Adam with a crippling overactive thyroid. But somewhere along the way, he stumbled across and adopted the Caveman diet, essentially a Paleo style diet, which paved the path to some deep healing and nourishment and led to his realization that a barefoot approach to life was calling out his name. So he eventually quit his job, traveled around the country, and as I mentioned, lives and survives off the land. And what he does is shares his experience with community primarily through Instagram. Now, my interest in having a conversation with Adam arose after seeing some epic photos on his Instagram feed, as well as listening to him on the podcast titled Evolve, hosted by Pete Evans. So, in this particular episode, Adam touches on some of the ins and outs when it comes to his approach to Paleo / the caveman method of eating and how it helped him on his health journey. I was also interested in his experiences when it came to bow hunting, connecting with the land, tuning into the seasonal changes and the elements, rewilding in general. We chat about some of his animal experiences out on the land and a few other insightful bits and pieces along Adam's journey. If you're watching this on YouTube, unfortunately, there was an error when it came to processing the video file, but such is life when it comes to the occasional technical malfunction and technical difficulty. But the audio file is ripe and ready for your listening. So I'll leave it at that for now. And may this dialogue with Adam provide value to carry with you on your own path forward. Adam, welcome to Birdsong, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on, man.
Look, it's a real delight and a pleasure, and I'm really thankful for you taking the time out of your morning to come and join me for some of this intentional conversation. And as I mentioned to you in our previous conversation, honoring the sacred has been the opening theme. And as you may know, gestures or words are usually offered when we are entering a ceremonial space or a sacred space. And I would love to ask you, spending so much of your time by yourself out there in the wilderness, learning from nature-based cultures, learning from the land, living off the land, what is your relationship to the sacred like? Do you have any ceremonial or ritualistic practices that you participate in when you're out there on the land when it comes to honoring the sacred?
I guess I do. I mean, I don't tend to think about it too much. Like, I try to keep things pretty simple, but I guess if you to put it that way, I mean, I really try to be grateful and like have a lot of gratitude every time I do hunt something. I guess really just try to be present and enjoy the moment. Like, especially, I guess just when you start off with birdsong, that's kind of funny. I'm very aware when I'm out there. Usually, it's the kookaburras. This is when I'm up in the Gulf. They're usually my alarm clock in the morning. Sometimes it's like 4 a.m. The kookaburras will wake me up, and that's usually I'm like, all right, yeah, it's time to get into the day. And then it's the same at night too. Like, they'll do a roll call, and then I'm like, oh well, I guess it's time I go to bed. So I just try to follow that rhythm. But yeah, like, I guess initially I wasn't really aware of that, but yeah, I guess just really listening to nature and the rhythms, and that's how I try to honor it, to be part of it.
Yeah, I like that because there can certainly be a tendency to approach what we're talking about here, which is honoring the sacred purely from a mental point of view. But I would suspect that yourself and many other people who spend a lot of time living off the land, that it becomes so much more of an embodied thing. It's a moment to moment thing of being in presence and being connected to the land and being grateful. And I can feel the honoring of the sacred coming through in that way.
Yeah, like it's kind of like I'm definitely someone who can tend to, overthink things or spend too much time in my head. So yeah, like that is like the practice is just like trying not to do that, just being more aware of like the animal noises and yeah, trying not to be in your head, just sort of like how you're saying, yeah, and there's just being part of it. Like that's my way to honor it.
For sure. Yeah, and it's part of getting back to our roots, which I call our wild animal wisdom or our primal essence within, which is not being up here in the head, but being in this deeply embodied feeling animal state of being. And one thing that I've noticed on your Instagram, which is your primary social media channel, is that it's full of content where you're out in the bush, or you've got the sun beating down on your bare skin, or you're making fires, you're bow hunting, you got photos of amazing sunsets, or you're holding or wrangling an assortment of wildlife out there, or you've got native food in the palm of your hands. And as we get into the heart of the conversation, I'd love to touch on some of these threads, which to me essentially all encompasses learning about your relationship to the land, your relationship to nature, largely as a hunter, but to some extent, I guess, a gatherer and a forager too. But firstly, for some context for myself and also for the people that are going to be tuning into this, whereabouts are you living at the moment with all of the COVID-19 craziness that we're experiencing? And as a follow-on question to that, whereabouts does most of this nature immersion take place that we're seeing in all the photos? Do you have one area that you're spending a lot of time in, or are you constantly on the move?
Yeah, sweet. Well, firstly, at the moment I'm in Blackwater in central Queensland. Um, yeah, it's kind of funny. I just happened to be in this area around the time everything cracked off. So yeah, it's actually worked out pretty well for me, really, to be stuck here of all places. But yeah, like the last couple of years, I've just been traveling Australia, so a lot of my photos have been from my adventures, and well, I've done a couple of laps of Australia now, I guess you could say. But most of my time that I've spent in the last couple of years has been up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. So that's like the very middle part of the top end of Australia. Yeah, near the Northern Territory Queensland border. Yeah, it's where I do most of my sort of hunting and nature immersion. You want to call it that?
Yeah. What's the allure to that particular place? Is it because it's close to Blackwater where you live, or is there something particular about that that calls out to you?
Yeah, actually, it's not very close at all. It's like a 2-day drive. Um, but the it's kind of funny how I wound up there. Actually, it was actually when I first started traveling Australia. I just happened to be traveling through a small town up there called Burketown, and this is pre sort of health days before I really cared about my health too much. I mean, like this is when I got really sick, and that's sort of what inspired me to travel. But at the same time, I wasn't really aware yet of looking after myself. You could say I was kind of learning, but anyway, I was at the pub, and I met a guy there, an Indigenous fella, and yeah, we got talking, and yeah, we just like talking about fishing and hunting, and realized we had a lot of in common, and he invited me out onto the Indigenous land, and it kind of all went from there. Yeah, like I actually didn't go out there with him at that stage. It was like a full year or two later we actually reconnected, and he invited me up there fishing and hunting. And I was I was like, yeah, this seems like the right time. So I went back up there, and then yeah, I've just been going back ever since. Like, just it's the most amazing place up there. Like, it's so remote. Like, there's no people. There's just the small indigenous communities, and other than that, there's nothing. It's just, yeah, it's a really great place to spend a lot of time. Yeah.
If we were to paint a picture for myself and for the listeners too, what are some of the differences in the landscape between Blackwater and the middle of the top of Queensland? Because from what I understand, Blackwater is kind of, one of my friends would language it as big sky country, where it's a lot of farmland. And I imagine that up there in the Gulf of Carpentaria, it would be a lot more dense when it comes to bushland.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's a lot of similarities. Like, whenever I think of the top end, I always think of like the really yellowy, creamy grass that's everywhere, and pandanus trees. They're like a pineapple looking tree with these bright orange nuts on them. That's always what I think. Yeah, when I'm up there, like, it's I guess they're kind of similar in a way, but yeah, like, a lot of the trees are different, and the animals are obviously a fair bit different. That's what I noticed. Definitely the trees, and yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason, that grass that stands out for me is just like that. Yeah, that real awesome yellowy, creamy grass.
Mm. Are we talking more open grasslands, or is it pretty densely packed shrub and trees? And is it quite dry, or is it lush?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about the top end is it's everything. Like, it's, yeah, like, there's sections that are really open and dry. A lot of it is really thick, scrubby land. But then, yeah, there's little pockets of really lush green stuff. There's a lot of swamps up there as well. So it's, yeah, there's a lot happening in one place.
Yeah, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I'd love to go down that pathway of exploring bow hunting with you and your connection to the land up there. But to build a little bit more of a foundation, as you touched on before, you were struck with your health issues. And we mentioned this in your bio as well, that you're out on the coal mines working for almost a decade, and then you were getting sick and the tests revealed that you had issues with your thyroid. Was it hyper or hypothyroidism?
Hyper,
Hyper.
overactive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you found out through Pete Evans about this paleo style of eating, right?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of funny. It was two things at once. There's a book called, yeah, it's like, why is my thyroid, still having symptoms, but my results say I'm normal. It's something like that. Like, I should know the name of it by now because it's like the book that changed my life. But I was actually reading that book, and there's literally one word in there, and it says caveman. It was kind of funny. It was at that same time. Like, I think I was talking to my mum at the time, and I was like, oh, um, I think one way I could probably fix myself is doing the caveman diet. And then my mum at the same time, she's like, oh, there's a guy on TV called Pete Evans that's promoting the paleo, which is like the same thing. And I was like, really? And then it all went from there, because I'd already started the journey, but then to actually see there was someone on TV promoting it. So yeah, like, obviously I bought his books because it was a pretty good guide on how to do it. And yeah, that was the journey, man. Like, that one word in a book that said caveman, like, literally just completely changed my life.
Yeah, so you went on to the caveman or this paleo style diet, and you noticed that a lot of your health symptoms started to shift and started to resolve.
Yeah, yeah, like, so much changed, to be honest. Like, I guess at the time, you don't even really think about it, but it would, like, what would best describe it would be like this constant, like, fog, like cloud on the brain. And yeah, like, going paleo or caveman or just real food, eating that kind of way. Yeah, it's like it cleared that up as well, if not like a lot of health issues. So yeah, it's been a lot of things actually. Like, yeah, just it resolved a lot of health issues, but like clearer head, more mental clarity. Like, yeah, there's so many benefits from it. And to be honest, even to this day, I'm still getting more benefits. Like, it hasn't stopped yet. I'm 5 years in, and I'm still noticing things improving. And even where I'm at now, I'm like, holy crap, like it's just crazy that I'm still noticing changes. So I don't know if it's going to stop. Hopefully it doesn't. But
Yeah, look, no, I can relate to the importance of shifting to these styles or this way of eating, moving towards whole foods, real foods, as you put it. But to clarify, what is it specifically that you are eating and that you are not eating or avoiding with your paleo or caveman diet? Obviously, meat is a big part of that, but I'd love to get into some of the things that you're actively avoiding and actively choosing to add in.
yeah, okay. Um, it's like constantly evolving for me. I guess paleo is a good start point, but from there it's really evolved over the time, because then some things which if you follow the guidelines of what paleo would be, or any diet is really, it's kind of funny that, yeah, there's like these rules and stuff, or well, not rules, but there's like these general guidelines, and they work. But I guess really at the end of the day, I'm kind of doing like intuitive eating, I guess you could say. Like, it's always whole foods, but everyone seems to be different, and especially for myself, navigating what foods work and don't work for me. Like, that's one thing I noticed, like going paleo and removing initially grains, legumes, dairy, refined sugar, and that dramatically increased my health. Like, it was just profound, like the health increase I had. But from there, yeah, it must have been a few years in that I started having trouble digesting plants. But I guess if I really think about it, like, as you become more aware of your body and food, and what works with you and what doesn't tend to work, because it always changes. Like, you could be fine on one thing, and then like later on down the track, your body might not do so well on that food. Yeah, like, I really started to notice, like, I was having a lot of stomach issues with plants. So at the time, I actually thought it was a problem with meat. And I had a few people tell me, they're like, "Yeah, well, of course, silly. Like, as you get older, you can't digest meat anymore. You got to go plant based." And I was like, "Huh." So I actually, and I'm not knocking plant based at all. I think there's a time and a place for everything. And at the same time, like, I'm not going to say carnivore's the be all and end all. I just listen to my body. Like, I'm not going to label myself one or the other. But at the time, yeah, like, I started going more plant based, and I actually got worse. And I was like, what the hell? Like, at the like with the way, I guess, there seems to be a big cultural shift to a more plant based diet, and a lot of people are promoting the health benefits of it. And I started trying it. Like, I wouldn't say I went fully plant based, but I backed right off on meat and added more plants in. And yeah, like, I actually got worse, and like, it looked like I was pregnant all the time. Like, I was so bloated. So I actually did the opposite. I was like, well, okay, well, maybe I'll change this around. I'll try the opposite. So I added more meat in and backed right off on the plants. And then I started to get better again. And I was like, okay. And then I got to that stage where I was still like dabbling around with plants and stuff like that. And yeah, like, it was not working at all. So I, like, at the time, it seems pretty crazy. Now it doesn't seem so crazy to me. But yeah, I went completely carnivore. And yeah, yet again, I felt really awesome. So I went along with that. And I mean, it makes sense to me now why that worked. Like, I think, I think it had a lot to do with my gut bacteria. Like, I think I would have what you call like a dysbiosis, and I'm pretty sure at the time, a lot of the plants I was eating were like really starchy, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and stuff like that. And I think I was really overfeeding. Well, I don't know if you could call any bacteria bad, but I definitely had like an overgrowth, and it was feeding into that. So then by going carnivore, I kind of was starving all that off. And it's been like a really great reset for me. But I've been doing the carnivore for a while, felt great. And then all of a sudden I started like having dreams dreams about asparagus of all things. I don't know why. Um, I was just like every night I was like waking up in the middle of the night, like when you wake up from a nightmare, I was like, ugh, and I
Yeah,
was
for
like
sure.
asparagus. I was like, what the fuck? And then yeah, so I guess I've started to dabble in adding a few plants back in now, following probably what you call like a gaps approach. And yeah, it seems to be okay. Hey, like I can definitely overdo it. I mean, yeah, some people, yeah, like the carnivore really does, really does work for me. Like it's probably not going to work for everyone. But yeah, I really noticed the benefit, and I've noticed now that yeah, I can have a small amount of plants, and my body seems to want mostly meat, and that's where I'm at, and it really fits in with how it is for me when I'm out, in nature as well. Like I do think you would struggle to live on plants completely, like meat seems to be the most bang for your buck. So I kind of just unknowingly I'm kind of doing that, I guess, and that seems to be the best approach for me. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, you touch on a lot of important points there, and I can resonate with a lot of that within my own health journey. And that's such an important piece that you speak to, which is coming to listen to what your body needs on a moment to moment daily basis. I'd love to know about the process of hunting for you, and to provide a bit of my own backstory. I originally started archery, almost a decade ago now, with the intention to eventually become self-sufficient through bow hunting, but some forks in the road led me down different pathways, and while there's still a large part of me that desires to jump back in, I'm also trusting that that particular journey will fall into place all in good time. So what I am interested in here is your experience, and there's a few threads to explore here, and perhaps we could start with your own journey into bow hunting. And this could be a good place to start for anyone else who is curious about starting their own journey and becoming self-sufficient in this manner.
Yeah, right. I yeah, I guess I kind of started the same as you. Like I initially like I only started. My brothers actually got me into it. So my brothers were just shooting targets with like I mean, just simple bows. And I guess even before that, as kids, we'd like grab sticks and bits of string and make our own bows. So yeah, my brothers like initially got me into it, and then from there, I really I really stuck with it. Hey, I thought, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And I mean, I grew up on a farm when I was little, so I mean, I'd been around hunting, and it was a cattle property, so like you see cattle and other animals get harvested. So like, I mean, it wasn't completely new to me. And then yeah, like I guess you got to that stage, like we're shooting the boxes and pretty good at shooting targets, to be honest. And it got to that stage, like my brothers were pretty keen for hunting. I mean, we all were at the same time, and I thought, yeah, like that'd be pretty cool. And at the time, we didn't really have anyone to show us how to do it or really to learn from. We actually all taught ourselves. So my brothers and I would just go out and try to hunt. And then obviously, when you start bow hunting, you'll learn that you do a lot more time walking around, carrying your bow than you actually ever do hunting. So if you like nature walks, and you're gonna love bow hunting. I think at the time, I can't remember exactly for what reason, but yeah, like I ended up just with the way I worked, I had a even time roster. So I think my brothers are at work, so I'd always have days off that always didn't line up. So I'd go out by myself hunting a lot. And then the more I did it, like, I mean, I guess I was lucky as a kid growing up. Like I was always, my dad took us out fishing, and we would do, rifle hunting and stuff like that. So I had a rough idea, but I guess I didn't really realize I definitely really had to like reteach myself. So when I was out there, like I'd walk up and down the river on the property where I was allowed to go, and I wasn't successful for a long time. Hey, like I'd go out, and then over time, like I kind of started to notice, I'm like, oh, like the pigs seem to hang around here. And then I'd notice the signs where they are and then what to look for. And it kind of just kept, every time I went out, I'd learn more and more and I'd notice new things. So I'm kind of glad I started off learning that way. Like it got to that stage where I was like, right, like I know what to look for now. And then I learned how to find the pigs. So then when I was going out, I started to get pretty successful at finding them. At that stage, I couldn't quite get close enough because I didn't realize, there's so much more involved. Like finding them is just like one part. Then there's like knowing the wind direction and noise and all this other stuff. And then every time I go out, like I'd get closer and closer and closer and get better and better at it. And then, yeah, it got to that stage where I actually got a pig with my bow. Like it was crazy, like I didn't even know what to think. I was like, wow, like it's all actually just happened, and it all happened so fast. And I was like, holy crap. And to be honest, when I first started hunting, I've always like had a deep, respect for nature. And I remember as a kid growing up, like I always loved like David Attenborough docos, and I was always like rolling over rocks, catching lizards, and I just loved animals. But at the time, as far as hunting went, there was like the mentality that you don't eat wild pigs. So yeah, I actually didn't eat the first pig that I shot, and I don't know, like something in me, I kind of knew. I was like, it just like I was like, I kind of felt bad. Like I was like, that feels really weird to do that, and then it just didn't sit right with me to hunt something and waste it. Like I guess you could look at it from another angle, that yeah, like definitely there's pest species in Australia, and they they do, I guess, need to be removed. But just yeah, just my own personal journey, and for me, it just didn't really sit with me well. So I I started eating what I was bow hunting, and then it just kind of kept growing from there. And then I felt really good eating like wild meats and stuff. I thought, yeah, okay, like this feels right. And yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I started any other way. But yeah, that's been my hunting journey, and then from there, like it's snowballed. Like yeah, like sometimes I'll go out. I'm not even worried about taking the bow now. Like I'll just go catch grasshoppers or something. Like yeah, I guess we can get so caught up in just bow hunting, but yeah, like there's so much out there to eat. Yeah, so it's been a pretty awesome journey. Like I'd wish I'd started eating things sooner, but yeah, that's the learning. That's the learning of it all. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have heard from a lot of hunters who I do follow, whether that's through social media or on podcasts or documentaries, and a lot of them speak to this mixture of feelings, the elation, the excitement, the adrenaline, but also interwoven with that can come the heaviness that comes from the acknowledgement of the reverence, the process of taking a life. And also, as you say, there's so much to it when it comes to tracking the animal through the bush. Obviously, you've got to go and find where the animal is, and you've got to learn the animal's habits and behaviors, and you've got to take the wind into account. And once you kill an animal, then you've obviously got to prepare the meat and skin the animal. And there's just so many carry it out. Some of these guys who are out in the backcountry or out in the top end or over in the States somewhere, and they are hunting these gigantic elk or buffalo, and they're skinning it and carving it up, and they've got to hike, and who knows how heavy these animals are, super heavy. And that is a real test on many levels: endurance, physical strength, mental fortitude. So I understand there's many elements in play when it comes to hunting and taking a life. And I think hunters get misrepresented, or there's a misconception that they don't care for the land, or they don't have a love for nature or for the animals. And I think it's it's a limited and imbalanced perspective, and we could certainly talk about that. But before we go down that path or any others, you mentioned the pigs and you mentioned some of the insects. I'm also interested to know what other animals that you're hunting and eating out there on the land?
Well, with the bow in Australia, you're legally only allowed to hunt uh, feral species or pest species. So, like no one area seems to have all of them. Like they're spread out all over Australia. So, I mean, I've probably nearly like just as I travel, wherever I can get permission to hunt, or it's like sometimes people will just get onto me and like they'll invite me out to go with them. And yeah, I've been pretty lucky to try a lot of the different species. And then I love getting other hunters excited about eating food too, because I think a lot of hunters are definitely getting more aware of it now. Like there is that thing, like everything has energy, and it's no small thing to take a life. Like there's definitely there's a lot of emotion around it when you hunt, and then people probably say then too, or why would you hunt? But that's the thing. It's like if you're going to eat meat, I think it's good to actually participate in the hunting or the processing of an animal at least. So then, like you're more aware. Like you go to the shops and you buy your meat or whatever. You don't really know what's going on before it gets to that stage. So I think it's good to be in that, like to at least experience a hunt or be part of it or witness it to actually really have more of an understanding of what's really going on there. And there is that, yeah, like that feeling of getting it yourself is just, yeah, it's emotional. Yeah, like you just describe it very well. Yeah, like it's definitely a very emotional experience. So yeah, I've been pretty lucky to travel Australia and get to harvest a lot of different animals with the bow. And then yeah, especially getting to when I've spent time with the Indigenous people, getting to try a lot of the Australian bush tuckers, if you want to call them that. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start with what ones I've tried. Hey, like I've had so many different things. Like as far as like ones that maybe people would find weird, um, I don't know, maybe like freshwater mussels, mangrove worms. They're pretty full on. What else? Like yeah, just heaps of different wild animals. Like I've tried goanna, yeah, and they're actually surprisingly really really good. Like wallaby is amazing. Yeah.
So with the bigger animals, I heard you talk about this when you were chatting with Pete Evans on his podcast, and you were saying that when you go out and you do hunt the bigger animals, you're generally doing this within the indigenous communities and you share the meat with each other. So when you're harvesting and dispersing the meat between all of these different people, how much are you taking with you? Is it just enough for a couple of meals, or is it enough to last a few days or a week? Because I'm interested in what the long-term storage methods are like, because you obviously don't have refrigerators or nice little places to store your meat, so I'm guessing that the primary method of long-term storage would be something like jerky, like drying the meat out over a fire, removing all the moisture so it doesn't go bad.
Well, actually, I'm pretty lucky. I do have a fridge, um, because yeah, I mean, like the smoking method and that, like that's great, but I mean, especially when I do go off more remote, I mean, there's definitely stages. Like I have gone days without eating. Like I've been hunting morning until nighttime, and I have not got anything to eat. And I mean, yeah, like the fridge is just good, like backup. So then that way, at least if I do hunt something, I'm making the most of it. So then I'm not having so much wastage. Like usually, if I'm going to go eat something, like I'll get like the mud snails or freshwater mussels or anything like that, I will eat them fresh. So I'll usually only catch what I can eat for a meal. Like I won't gather more than that. But especially when it comes to bow hunting, like say I do hunt a pig or a goat or something like that, when you break them down completely, it's probably not that much there. Is like, I mean, considering how much I can eat, like there's probably not that much there. Like if I did bow hunt a goat, like I can fit a whole goat in my fridge pretty easy.
Where's the fridge? Is this connected to a generator, or do you have a camp set up when you're out living on the land, or is this in your car?
Yeah, just a little fridge, like a a battery powered fridge in my car, or solar powered. But yeah, like literally, I just have everything just in my car. Like the fridge is pretty handy. Like with the way I eat, I don't always tend to need it because it can get pretty hot up there. Like say it was like a cooler climate, you could probably get away with like not having something in the fridge for a couple of days. But I mean, when it's like 40 degrees up there all day, normally even I'm not too worried about meat. Like, I'll eat something that's almost rotten, but up there, like just to get the most out of it, not waste it, like I will break it down and put it in the fridge.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
I was going to ask you if, well, I and many others, I'm sure, have heard this idea that when nature based cultures or indigenous people, when they hunt something, they use a lot of the animal. Not hardly any of the animal goes to waste. And I'd love to know if that, excuse me, seems to be true in your experience. Do they use a lot of the meat? What happens to the entrails? What happens to the skin and the pelts? Do you make anything from that, or do any of the indigenous people make anything from that, or are there large amounts that are left behind for the other animals to come in and scavenge?
yeah, for my personal experience, like spending time with the indigenous people, like they're all different. Like they all have different ways about doing things. Um, but for me personally, like when I go out with them, like I don't tend to hunt too many of the wild scrub cattle up there because they are pretty big. If I am going to hunt one, like I'm pretty selective about which one I'll take. But usually when I'm up there, yeah, like I'll just like we'll just go out together. I'll just go out with my mate, and he usually gets a pretty big crew together of the town locals, and yeah, like they'll just go out, they'll hunt one of the scrub cattle, and like literally the only thing left. Like they are so fast at doing it too. They'll literally just be skin on the ground. And normally, what we'll do when we're out there, like we'll make a fire and cook the rib bones up because they're pretty hard to store. Like you got to chop them up if you're gonna put them in the fridge or something like that. So yeah, just cook the rib bones up fresh, and then literally, I mean, they've argued over which organs, who gets what. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I know you had like the milk gut last time," and like they'll argue over it. And normally, I love the organs, so it's kind of funny. Normally, I end up with like rib fillet or eye fillet, which you'd pay a fortune for here at the shops, but they're not even that worried about it. Hey, to be honest, like they're pretty mad on the organs, which is really interesting. Hey, so literally, yeah, like there'll just be a few bones left and the skin, and other than that, there's nothing left. Like it all gets used.
Yeah, when we're talking about eating organ meats and you're talking about eating these strange things like the mussels and the insects, it all seems very bizarre. But that's coming from a perspective where we're largely removed from the environment and we are buying our foods from the supermarkets when we only have, you know, two to three to four choices from different types of animals. So one thing I wanted to backtrack on was you've mentioned the wild pigs, the boars. I know they have a bit of a reputation for doing some damage, and I'd love to know what kind of close encounters or perhaps dangerous encounters with the animals that you've had out there on the land.
Yeah, what like sometimes I won't even use a bow. Like I will just run an animal down and catch it with my bare hands. And I mean, it does sound silly to say that, but I don't know. There's just something about doing that, like it does feel very primal. But in doing that, I have paid the price. I have been bitten and scratched. And the closest encounter I had with a pig. I mean, actually have had a few close encounters because yeah, it's kind of crazy that like that actually is an animal that can could kill you. I mean, yeah, I have heard of some hunters, like having some pretty gnarly encounters with them. Like I think one dude's like got castrated from a boar. It happened so quick. Hey, that was a pretty gnarly one to mention. But for me personally, it was pretty dangerous, but it was probably more so dangerous because I was so remote. Like I was a 3-hour drive from an indigenous community, and yeah, like I got a bit too close to a boar, and yeah, I paid the price for it. Like I had my hand ripped open. And the only reason I actually got out of that one was by putting my bow basically in its mouth and my hand in its mouth to stop it from like slashing my legs up. But like that could have been so much worse, hey. And it was like definitely not something to brag about. Like it was completely like I felt horrible, man. Like that's like not a situation I want to put an animal in. And that's the whole reason I bow hunt, you know, like it's a pretty quiet, peaceful, you know, effective way to take an animal's life, you know, like it's not loud and but just you know, like that's the thing. Like anytime you're out in nature, you know, like stuff can happen, and yeah, just on that day, yeah, I got a bit complacent and paid a pretty big price for it, you know.
And when something like that happens, do you have to head out back into society to find medical help, or can you sort yourself out?
To be honest, like I mean, I have had a few nicks and I mean, like scratches and bites and stuff that I wasn't too concerned about, but at the time that happened, the pig's tusk went through my hand, and I don't know if it got a nerve or something, but my hand didn't work. I couldn't use my hand, and I thought, oh, like that's you know that's not something I'm going to take lightly. And I thought just the risk of like having permanent damage, I thought I better go back to town because even if going back to the remote community, like there's nothing to say that they were going to be able to help me. Yeah, that's the whole funny story as well. So I did. I basically just bandaged up my hand, and I did like the 3 hour drive one handed back to the community. And then actually, like I got to the hospital. Like I mean, yeah, there was a waiting list, so I had to like sit there and wait for ages. And then when I did get in, because they see some pretty crazy stuff out there, and they're like, "Oh, that's not that bad at all. Like we see heaps worse than this all the time. Like people bring their dogs into hospital that get ripped up by pigs, or you know, just people in general come to hospital that have been ripped up by pigs. Like it's just, I don't know. When you're out there, like a lot of the locals are out there doing really outdoorsy stuff like that, so you're going to encounter it. But yeah, the doctor come in and like give me a numbing needle in the hand, and then he had to go do something else. So then an hour later he came back, and the numbing needle had worn off. And then he said to me, he's like, "Oh look, dude, you know, I haven't really actually got time to help you out." So he just like give me the brush and like the wash, and I had to like wash it out myself, like in the hospital. It was pretty wild. And then in the end, that's all I was. I was like it was just horrible. Like just sitting there washing out my wound, and then yeah, he's just like, "I should be right, man. Like we won't stitch it up just in case it gets infected because like they would have to reopen it." He's like, "Just leave it. Like obviously it's gonna scar, but he's like, it'll be the best bet." So yeah, I just no stitches or nothing. I just washed it out myself. So that's I mean, I probably could have just done it myself, but and like the numbing needle was a waste of time because it wore off by the time I had to wash it. So I can tell you that if you ever got to wash an open wound, it is not fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow, pretty average level of care there by the doctors or the staff there. Hey, what about
I
snake
mean,
bites or spider bites?
yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I've definitely been bitten by a few spiders, but you know, I'm still here, so obviously I haven't been bitten by a really bad one just yet. When I go really remote, I don't like. I love animals and getting really close and interacting with them, but I definitely won't really like muck around with really extremely venomous snakes when I'm out by myself. You know, a couple of hours from town. That's pretty much yeah, it's like Russian roulette.
Hmm, hmm.
um, but yeah, I've been pretty lucky. You know, like I really try to be aware of my surroundings, and that's why I felt so silly when I got attacked by the pig. You know, like normally I try to avoid stuff like that, but yeah, I try to be very aware. You know, like to avoid those situations. So yeah, I've been pretty lucky at this stage. Like anything I've been attacked by hasn't been venomous, thankfully.
Mm, mm. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this particular question because I know there are probably people, well, perhaps there might be people tuning in who hold this perspective that you can't say that you love animals while in the same breath you're going out and killing them, or you can't say that you respect and love animals and still eat them. So what might you say to this particular perspective?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just being more connected to what I'm eating, you know? Like some people are probably not gonna like this, but like plants and animals, like everything has energy. So you're taking life no matter what you eat. Yeah, I think like going completely pant based, going completely plant based or vegan, you know, like I mean for myself personally, like I could easily be like that or do that. I can really see the point of not harming animals. But when it comes to your health, like my health, like that's first and foremost to me. And I'm very aware that, like, okay, I know that I feel better when I eat meat, and I also want to be aware of that process and what I'm eating. So you know, like, I've put myself in a position where it's like, okay, well, I'll go out and I'll experience a hunt myself. Like, not that I can always go hunting and get my own food like that way. Like, I'm, you know, stuck in town, if you want to call it that, at the moment, and I will go. You know, like, I will go to the butchers and buy food, and then in that same token, like, I'll try to be more like, I'll try to buy grass fed, or, like, you know, that, like, to me, that's how I feel that I can still try to do the right thing, or, you know, in the future, like, you know, try to promote better meat practices. But yeah, I really feel, for me, being in that process, witnessing a hunt, doing it myself, like, I'm not putting my blinders on and just, you know, trying not to be aware of what's really going on. Like, not that everyone's going to get that opportunity either, you know, like, I'm not saying that anyone that doesn't choose to hunt's bad or anything like that. Like, not everyone has the desire to go hunt. That's fine. But just for me, I mean, that's how, I guess, if I want to call it, justify hunting, you know, like, I'm putting myself in that position where I'm getting my own food and I'm being a part of it, you know, like, being part of the,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I have respect for anyone that wants to practice a vegan based way of living. And this is not something I've really touched on all that publicly before, because it seems to be a bit of a sticky point, and there's complexities and nuances within this conversation. But it feels like I'm going to touch on it a little bit here. And I think this is something that perhaps a lot of vegans, or maybe not necessarily vegans, but it's just a perspective that many people can throw their arms in the air over, this argument that you can't love animals and at the same time eat meat, or hunt an animal or kill an animal. And as I mentioned before, I find it to be quite an imbalanced perspective. You know, if we take a look at nature-based cultures around the globe that still have interwoven into their lifestyle hunting and living off the land, then we'll find a deep reverence for the sacred and all the animals that live off the land. You know, the two-legged, the four-legged, the winged, the swimmers, the ones with the horns, the antlers, the insects. There's an understanding, which you speak to, that life consumes life in one way or another, and that we as humans are not exempt from that. And I think there's perhaps a little bit of a lack of integration, in a sense, when people take this spiritual perspective, and you might have heard this before, of saying we need to shift to only eating plants because it's how we ascend our consciousness, or it's how we evolve our consciousness or become more spiritual beings. And eating animals and killing animals is causing suffering, and it's murder, it's low vibration. You know, meat is essentially something that we don't need to be eating. You know, from this perspective that we're higher beings with this higher evolved consciousness, and because of that, we should be taking a moral or an ethical high ground and not consuming animals because of the reasons that I just mentioned. But it's certainly not the only perspective, and I'd probably say that within all of the perspectives that we can hold, I don't think it's necessarily the highest perspective to take. And, you know, it feels like I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, which I think I am. But, you know, I think humanity has made a fundamental shift away from their primal wild animal essence within, which we touched on at the start of the convo. We're domesticating ourselves and disconnecting ourselves from nature more than we've really ever known, you know, with technology, aspects of science and religion and large scale agriculture. And as you mentioned, the factory farms, and, you know, that's a whole separate thing that we're talking about. And we don't need to go down that rabbit hole to know how destructive to the environment and unsustainable and unethical that is. But, you know, there's been a shift in perspective to see ourselves as somehow separate from the natural world, and not recognizing on a deep embodied level that we ourselves are nature. And, you know, with this disassociation, the disconnection, we've distanced ourselves from actually, as you say, participating in the ecology that surrounds us. You know, we've become observers from the outside, and most people no longer forage or hunt or gather. It's all the supermarket and the grocery foods, and there's plenty of people who don't even grow their own foods in a small little garden or veggie patch. And it makes me think of zoos. Like, if we take this concept of zoos, like physical places that we've created, structures to look at animals through these glass panels, but if we zoom out, we've kind of done that through much of our society. We've disassociated ourselves from the wild. We've abandoned it. And it's like we've cast it out, we've exiled it, and we don't want it coming back into the castle walls. We're kind of blocking ourselves from that part of ourselves. And it leads to this state of consciousness that it has trouble with holding that perspective of having the deep respect for the animals and knowing they're sacred, while also having that understanding that these beings are sustenance for other life forms, and they give their lives or have their lives taken to sustain the life of another, including ourselves, if we so choose to live a life that requires us to eat animal products for health, for the state of health when it comes to physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So there it is.
I think for me, I guess everyone's going to have their own truth, like I have friends that are full vegans, and like there's no hate towards me and I have no hate towards them. Like, we're all on our own journey, but I think we've created this world where we can, like you can be something, like you can be vegan because you have access to all these plant foods, like you actually don't have to go forage it or gather it or hunt it. It's there. You have a choice of all these plants that are from all over the world that are at your shops you can go eat, when in reality, if you're out in nature, it's not going to be that abundant. And the sort of the truth that I've come to on this is, if you were to go out into the wild and survive, like I'm not saying plants are bad at all. Like I'm definitely not saying that. But let's just say you were to be out and you had to hunt or gather all your own food. I don't think you're going to survive on just plants, from my own personal experience, considering how hard they are to come by at times, and meat's hard to come by too. But yeah, if you that's sort of how I like to think about things, from like a really primitive, primal, wild survival kind of point of view, like what's going to work in that situation. And yeah, like that's the sort of the conclusion that I come to, is that you really need meat. If you were to go and only try to survive on plants, you're probably not going to survive. And then in that same situation, if you were to go out there and starve yourself for a few weeks, you might change your idea of not eating meat. Your body's, and it's so funny. I've seen this before, like plant-based people, you don't eat for a while and the body starts to crave meat. And it's really interesting to watch that, actually.
Yeah, we spoke to it before, and everyone is different and everyone has different needs at different stages of their life. And we hear about it, well, at least I hear about it through many, many different sources, that some people seem to thrive off vegetarian or vegan-based lifestyles and diets, where other people seem to thrive off more carnivore-style diets. And again, that might not necessarily be for the entirety of their lives. That might just be for a single slot within their life, which might be months or years or whatever it is. And like you said, it's a privilege to have that choice, to be able to go down to the supermarket and go, okay, yeah, I'm not going to eat the meats that come from the factory farms. And I think that's a great thing. I think that a definite shift needs to happen away from that. And people perhaps do need to move more towards plant-based eating or just whole foods eating, to shift away from the factory farms. But what's coming through is this interesting perspective towards the hierarchies of life, like the hierarchies of intelligence, that one animal or one particular life form is more worthy of life because of its size or the meaning we give it, the emotional attachment we place onto that, the information that we've crafted or found out when it comes to its level of intellect or consciousness. Like, when it comes to plants, for example, we well, in a generalized context or perspective, we don't see plants as experiencing pain or emotions or consciousness in the way that we or in the way that other animals do. So we say it's okay to eat them, to harvest them, but in a sense, we're kind of seeing things from a purely human lens here. And if we want to take the route of science, we know that plants have a deeply sophisticated method or methods of communicating and experiencing life, deeply sophisticated levels of consciousness. And for anyone that has explored plant medicine, in the form of psychedelics or entheogenic plant medicines, you'll probably have this idea of the intelligence that I'm talking about. And again, I don't want to go and turn this into another kind of philosophical rabbit hole, but the main point is that we're disconnected from our place in the great web of life, and we've got so much hubris to think that we as humans are the most evolved form of consciousness. And really, I think there's a lot of humbling that needs to be done. And I think getting out on the land and spending time on the land, immersed in nature, is one of the ways that we can find ourselves humbled, and we can get back in touch with this deep sense of reverence and respect and reconnect with the natural flow of life and the cycles, the seasons, the growth, the death, the rebirth cycles, and just connect back to the land and restore, refoster that sense of harmony between us and our kin.
Well said, man.
Look, I want to shift gears a little bit. I'm interested to know, spending so much time yourself out in the wilderness, I feel as though it's natural to develop a keener and keener awareness of the subtle changes that are happening on this seasonal basis that I speak to, which is obviously happening in our external environment. And I imagine as we develop those more subtle forms of awareness to the external, that can reflect back so that we can notice more subtle changes on the internal level to some degree. And I'm interested to know if you've found that that is the case when it comes to developing greater awareness of yourself, your mind, your emotions, just what's happening internally.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, man. One thing I've really noticed for myself is when when I was in town, and initially, like, started to dabble with meditation and I guess doing a lot of mindfulness practices and stuff like that. But when I've been out spending a lot of time by myself, alone out in the bush, I've really noticed that you're actually, it's like you're already doing it. So it's kind of funny. It's like we're doing meditation a lot. Like, I'm not saying meditation's bad at all. I mean, like, it's been really beneficial for me. But just one thing I've really become aware of is when you sort of out in nature, it's like you nearly, for me, I don't need to meditate. It's like I am just by being out there, because, like, I mean, I'm listening for birds, and you're like really trying to be in it, and it's like it is its own meditation. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's sort of like how it's been for me. And to be aware of that's pretty crazy. Like, I think by not being distracted by so much stuff, like, literally, yeah, you just got like animal noises, temperature, weather, like more basic things, I guess you're constantly being aware of that. Yeah, I guess it really calms the mind. And yeah, you can be more aware of what's going on inside yourself. And yeah, I guess that it is its own meditation.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say this, and it completely makes sense to me. And it's so interesting to take a look at how, just in a Western civilization, Western culture, societal point of view, we have to make these slots of time in the morning or the afternoon or the evening to sit down and do meditation. Whereas if you're out on the land, it makes sense that you're just in this place of constant presence, or it at least offers an opportunity to cultivate that sense of moment to moment presence and meditation, just in all aspects of life and all aspects in daily existence.
Yeah, like, one thing I've really found out there, because I guess so many things are catered for when you are in town. Usually, when I'm out in the Gulf, like up in the indigenous land by myself, usually, like, I'll wake up and it's like, okay, food, water, fire, Like they're like the three things I'm thinking about for the day. So then when I go hunting, like I'm so caught up in that task, like, time just flies and you're so caught up in it. I guess it is like, yeah, what people would call like getting in the flow. Yeah, like that real meditative state. And you're so in the moment of the task that you're doing, like that's your sole concern. And it just, oh yeah, it's such a powerful experience. Like it's hard to explain it. I'm not going to say I'm the best at explaining this. I just do it,
Yeah, so if we're talking about the external here, what have you noticed in regards to the seasonal changes and how life changes when you are out there immersed in the land in nature isolation? Changes in the food that you can hunt and forage, or the animals that are around at particular times of the day and particular seasons. Like, what comes to mind when you're thinking about the cyclical nature of the seasons and what you're tuning into?
Yeah, I guess some of the biggest things that I've noticed is as far as like time of year and season for different foods, in the Gulf of Carpentaria. As far as like the plants that I know of so far, it's definitely very seasonal. And then I guess it's not to say that they're going to be in season every year either, because like different rain cycles and temperature cycles are going to have a pretty big effect on all the different plants. So that's one big thing that I notice, and availability of those things. Then on a day-to-day basis, what I really notice is like animal actions and interactions. Like usually when I wake up, you can nearly set your clock by it. The kookaburras will wake me up. That's what I'll notice. Then normally, like to be honest, like I'll just sit there and I'll just be real quiet, and then I'll hear the animals. Like I might hear the pigs, or I'll hear the wild cattle, and then that way I'll know, like, okay, well I'm walking this way today. Or like say it's a particularly windy day, I won't hear anything. Or if it's raining, you're not going to hear anything. But it's really funny how the animals work. Like they'll like in the mornings they'll seem to be really noisy and active. Like they'll do a lot of roll calls so they know where each other are. Like the dingoes as well. Like you'll hear them early morning and late afternoon. Like they'll do a roll call, and it's pretty awesome to hear actually. Like all these different directions. There's all these dingoes calling. Like I'm just assuming this is what they're doing. Like they all know where they are for the night. And then during the day, all the animals get really quiet. Like they kind of doing their thing. They don't tend to make too much noise. And then yeah, until the afternoon, and then you'll hear it all again, and they're all calling. And then they always seem to be the most active in the morning and the afternoon as well. Yeah, like that's what I really noticed. Like especially up there. I mean, that has flow-ons for everywhere, but just if I was to describe just that one area, that's what I really sit with and notice.
Yeah, when you're touching on the rain and the wind, it brings up the following question for me, and I'm interested to know what your relationship is to the elements: fire, wind, water, earth, and of course spirit, because I imagine you cannot spend that much time out in nature on a continuous day to day to day to day basis without coming to know all of these elements on a very deep level, whether it's through building your own fires or recognizing the importance of having clean water, or the rains potentially coming through and flooding out the lands, but also giving you life. And always tuning into the wind when it comes to hunting, and making sure you're whether you're downwind or upwind, so on and so forth. So I would love to hear your relationship to these things.
One thing that's really been good for me is a deeper appreciation of the simple things. Like, say, at night you go have your hot shower before you go to bed. No one even thinks about that. It's just like it's a given, like you've got a hot shower there. It's great. Or, just being able to go to the tap, turn on the tap, you got water, go to the fridge, you got food, you got your lighter, you got fire. That for me, it's so crazy, like some people, uh, I don't know how to try to explain this, but like it's so funny, like the things that I can sort of get joy from, or contentment or happiness. Like literally when you have to, I mean, yeah, like I have a lighter and a fire starter and that as well. Like I just do the fire making with sticks. It's just like something that I enjoy to do. Like it gives me a deeper appreciation of a tool. That's fire, and just we really take for granted, because it's so easy just to make it. People probably don't even think about that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so easy. If you want fire, you just go grab a lighter, or you click on your gas burner on your oven or whatever. But for me, yeah, like, just like when I wake up, like, usually when I'm out there by myself, like, I will set myself weird routines like that. It's like, oh, okay, like, I'll make myself a fire with sticks. I don't know. I just like to set that challenge, but you really appreciate it more. Like, you make this fire, and you're like, wow, like, I made that, and it's just such a simple task can be so fulfilling. And then, because I've been out there and haven't had a shower for like weeks on end, and then I'll hop in like a dirty, muddy water hole, and I'm like, oh, this is great, having a wash. And then when I finally do get back to like a caravan park or a town, and I have a hot shower, like, just it is, you just can't explain to someone how awesome that feels, just to have a hot shower. Like, you could just sit there and you're like, holy crap, this is amazing. Yeah, I don't know if that's really resonating, or if you get what I'm trying to say, but it's just like, it gives me a deeper appreciation of just the elements, and even just my own resilience. Like, I can go out, like, I have noticed, like, I've been out with people, and they'll be like, holy crap, this is hot, and, like, they're sweating, they're struggling, and I'll be there. I'm like, oh, okay, like, it's not that bad. Or on the opposite end, with a lot of the cold immersion stuff I'll do, like, oh, I bloody love sitting in an ice bath or going for a cold swim. And someone else is like, stuff that. But it's just like, you just like build up your resilience at the same time. So yeah, man, there's a lot going on, and it's so simple and easy, and just, it's so crazy that something like a cold swim when you wake up can just be like the best thing that day. Like, it's just the simple things in nature can just be so powerful.
Mm,
Like with the elements.
mm. Let me throw a couple of rapid fire questions your way. So, when it comes to drinking water, what's the method of acquiring water for you? Do you have watering holes or rivers that you're frequenting, or do you bring water with you? Are you filtering your water?
Yeah, I mean, I have like my own water filter set up, but when I'm in the Gulf, um, there's definitely access to water there, which, like, I'd boil or something, or yeah, like, it would be a drive back to town and fill my. I have like a massive big stainless water tank in my trailer, so that's kind of why I don't really tend to have many showers. It's because I really try to conserve water, and that's like another thing. Like, just you learn to really appreciate the simple things, like how important water is. Because if I go out in the middle of nowhere and I use all my water having a shower, yeah, I just can't afford to do that. Like, I basically drink it, but I always filter it anyway, like, to do with my thyroid, and just
Mm,
trying to be
mm.
careful what chemicals and stuff I'm ingesting. Um,
What about sleep? Are you making bush shelters, or do you have a swag? Have you got a
yeah.
sleeping bag? Have you got to worry about creepy crawlies coming in the nighttime?
Um, I've had a bit of a dabble at everything.
Mm,
It's kind of crazy, I guess. I have like a rooftop tent, which is like pure luxury for me. You know what I mean? Like, I spend most of my time sleeping in a swag.
mm, mm.
I mean, I've definitely just slept in the dirt, and to be honest, actually, that's some of the best sleeps I've had too. Which, it sounds a bit crazy, yeah. But I definitely sleep very, very basic. But
Mm.
I do find, for whatever reason, once I start getting the cycle of things out there, like, literally as soon as the sun goes down, I just start getting tired. Like, I'm just
Mm.
ready for bed.
Mm.
So
You've
yeah.
mentioned going out with the and learning from Indigenous communities. Are you frequenting the same communities, or are you visiting different local nations around the area?
I've spent a bit of time with the Indigenous people up in Darwin. Some of the people, the Yolnu people from Elcho Island, from Arnhem they've been great to hang out with. So actually, that's the only place in Australia I haven't been, actually, is Arnhem Land. So that's where I plan to head to next, and try to immerse myself in that as much as I can. But other than that, yeah, like, the up in the Gulf of Carpentaria, there's an Indigenous community I go to up there, and like, that's probably that's the most interaction I've had up there. And it's probably not always like the most, like, people romanticize about the idea of what it would be like to go spend time up there with the Indigenous people. Like, maybe it's probably not what people think, but it is at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like, yeah, when you're there, and you're spending time with them and you're watching how they interact with the land and and stuff, like it's just mind blowing, like just how much knowledge they actually have. It's just like it's always mind blowing. Yeah, like every because yeah, I, a bit, like I have got to hang out with a few different Indigenous groups around Australia, and they yeah, like they all have their own different ways about things, and it's really awesome to try to yeah, I just love that experience. So yeah, like just trying to learn more from that. Yeah.
Mm. Have there been any teachings around respecting the land or rituals or ceremonies that are conducted for any variety of reasons that have been passed on to you?
Um, like in bits and pieces, the more time I get to spend up there, like the more knowledge that I get to learn. Like I mean, I don't tend to share everything that they teach me because a lot of yeah, I don't know, like there is um yeah, I think like the more comfortable that people get with you, like the more knowledge eventually they'll share. And I really try to respect that. So yeah, like I don't really share with will anyone really what like everything that I get taught. Like I think everyone's gonna like look at something their own way. So someone might misinterpret something or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but whatever the case, um, it's been really awesome. And then in my own way, like trying to interpret what they're saying and really try to think about it from like a really open-minded point of view. Because yeah, like I just love like I have heard a few, I guess what we'd call the Dreamtime stories, and just like the myth and the story, and like you can kind of see that there was definitely a purpose to that story, and really just yeah, like really just sitting with that and learning from it. I guess to touch on that, some of the men stories that I've heard when I've been up there. I mean, yeah, if you want to, like, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but my mate up there was telling me a few stories. There was like this one island, and if you traveled to it and you touch this one rock, like it'd make you a pretty give you a lot of mojo if you're a dude. And then there was another one. There's like this river, and there was this certain spot in the river, and if you could grab a rock, like yeah, if you get a rock from that river and you give it to a girl, any girl you wanted would be yours. And just there was just like there's just funny things like that, and I just love those stories. And then yeah, like there's the stories about there was like one island up in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and it was like a dingo that walked out and went into the ocean, and like that's how that island is there now, or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Like it's just really awesome to kind of not try to overthink it, but like really, yeah, just sit with those stories and just yeah, just appreciate them. So I've been pretty lucky to learn a few.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I'm up there, I'm always asking more, and I'll probably annoy the crap out of my mate. But I'm always asking him things like that because I just love that sort of stuff.
Mm. Yeah, I had a bloke called Leon Cossa on the show yesterday. We had a really interesting conversation about storytelling and mythology and poetry and delving into the importance of what we might call the mythopoetic or the mythic imagination, and how all these stories, they allow us to tap into this a deeper connection with the sacred, with the mystery, with spirit. And when you when you use the word man stories, or it maybe kind of think of like initiation stories to some degree, and this ties into rites of passage. And to circle around this particular point of conversation, maybe I'll ask it through the lens of the barefoot bush experiences, because I know this is something that you're offering or you want to offer. So maybe you can give us a rundown, especially for the listeners who might be feeling inclined to immerse themselves into this way of living and join you on some adventures.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in my journey, like I'm always trying to learn as much as I can off everyone, not just the indigenous people. Like I love learning as much as I can off everyone. But it is interesting to see their rituals and their rites of passage. And I was reading a great book, and I don't know if everyone needs to do the same rites of passage or initiation as everyone. I think you can in some ways create your own. I mean, I guess we can't. People these days kind of are. Like yeah, whether you go binge drinking or something unknowingly, you're probably trying to trigger off some kind of initiation. Um, unknowingly, that like when you're doing it, you probably don't realize that. But yeah, like, there is like that pushing the boundaries. For me personally, though, I like just being in nature, but at the same time, I'd call it embracing the suck, where like I do push my body pretty hard. It can really, well, for me personally, like it has really pushed me to like what you'd call like a really spiritual place. And I guess from my own self healing out in nature, like it is something that I would love to share with people at some stage. Like I would love to take people out. And I mean, yeah, it's like definitely something I've been researching more into initiation and initiations and rites of passage for people. So yeah, there are definitely a few little things in the up my sleeve that I would do with people when I'm out there. And it's kind of funny. It's everything that I do daily, that I didn't really think about, but it is something that can be used as a tool to I don't know the best way to describe it, but yeah, I guess to bring upon some kind of inner work or journey. So, and I think just the open vastness and the peacefulness out in nature is a beautiful place to do that.
So if people are wanting to get in touch with you for some of these future offerings, Instagram is probably the best place to go.
Yeah. I don't try to use too much social media, but yeah, Instagram seems to be the one that most people message me on. So that's the one that I stick to.
Yeah, cool. I'll make sure that the links to your Instagram are in the show notes for this particular episode for anyone listening. But I think we can start to wrap up our little convo now. But there's a couple of extra rapid fire questions I would love to send your way. One of them being, what do you wish you had known when you first started heading out on the land?
I mean, it's probably a really corny way to answer that question, but I I don't feel there's anything that I wish that I knew. Like, I mean, there's like to be honest, I really can't think of anything that I would change as far as like as that. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you've come across, and what have you learned from them?
Yeah, well, okay. Um, I guess because I have been doing it usually, by myself or solo, I guess that kind of forces you into a place where you are being more aware of your own thought patterns and just who you are when you by yourself, which, yeah, like, I mean, I think is a pretty yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing to put upon yourself. So yeah, that's something that I've really noticed. Yeah, it's
Mm,
been pretty
mm.
powerful actually.
And if I was to ask you for a couple of sources of inspiration, whether it is a person or people or books or otherwise that you found to be most valuable along your path and that you might think might provide value to others, what might you suggest?
As far as like just bush knowledge and survival, or just in like all aspects.
Yeah, you can answer that in any way
Okay,
that you feel.
I guess like going to be some pretty like and like yeah, completely different ends of the spectrum here. Um, I guess for my own personal journey, like I remember back in the day, what really inspired me to really love animals more or nature and just the bush in general. Like, yeah, it was like Steve Irwin. And as far as like bush knowledge, bush tucker, some of the best sources of information there was a TV show called The Bush Tucker Man back in the day, and Les Hiddens, and he has some great books on bush tucker. Like, honestly, I've had a few people that contact me wanting to know different plant species or what different foods are and stuff. And I have a few of his books, and I'm not going to lie, like that's the first thing I'll do. I'll quickly grab the book and I'll go through because they are pretty rare to get hold of. If you can find them, yeah, like hold on them, they're gold. And like to be honest, that's been the most powerful tool as far as bush tucker knowledge, and then obviously like learning off the indigenous people. But yeah, like as far as like that, yeah, Les Hidden's bush tucker books have been so helpful for me in like identifying what I can and can't eat, and that's always my go-to. Um, as far as like my own health journey stuff at the moment, Paul Chek is someone I'm really getting a lot of inspiration and knowledge from at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Check's podcast is a fantastic one to check out.
Like like at the moment they're like the two biggest ones that come to me. Yeah, pretty different, definitely different kinds of people, but
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. So, lastly, just as we opened up our space talking about ways in which we honor the sacred, I'd love to invite you to share any particular words that are coming through in relation to the sacred. And, that could be a prayer, a poem to pass on, some wisdom that you might like to share, or just simply saying some words of thanks or gratitude to anything meaningful, whatever's most important or most sacred to you in your life.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, well, I guess like randomly, this is just what's coming to me. Um, I guess if someone wanted to, as far as like, I guess you wanted to just be more immersed in nature or something in general, or just you could use this tool for anything, but this is just what's coming to me as like my wise words. Like taking time to just sit still and just be like aware of your senses. Like that's a pretty handy tool which you can use for a lot of different things if you are going to be out in nature, like just sitting there and just turning everything else off and just focusing on like your hearing and just or like just sit there and just smell or like vibration, what you can feel like that is all, they're all tools that you know what I mean, like you can really carry that into nature. Like if you have the ability to just sit there, and if someone was to ask me like what does it take to be a good hunter, um, I think just being aware, like just having the ability to just, because like you can, like I think that's my wisest words, is to just sit still and just go through your different senses. And I think that's a pretty powerful tool to take with you. Yeah, that's my wise words. Anyway,
Yeah, love it, brother. Perfect way to end. Adam, thanks so much for joining me on Birdsong today, mate. It's been a real pleasure to hear some of your story and the ins and outs of the knowledge and wisdom that you have to pass on.
thank you so much, man, for getting me on. I really appreciate it, man. Big love.
Hey guys, as we close up another episode, I'm sending out this big thank you for tuning into Birdsong, where the intention is to weave energetic threads of ceremony and the essence of what's sacred into these digital, technological, creative expressions. If you like the vibe here, I'm sure you know the deal. Please like and subscribe on all the usual media channels. And if you're open to it, please leave a rating and a review, as we all know it helps with the expansion of the show. It's always appreciated if you share this show with friends, with loved ones, with your community. And if you want to offer some next level support, please consider this a big, warm, friendly invitation to head over to the Patreon page. And all the links are in the description section of this episode. And on Patreon, I've got some gifts and goodies only accessible for our community over there. And as I'm sure you know, the smallest of contributions make such a big difference when they all add up. So I would be stoked to have your support in that way to help assist the vision to keep things unfolding and expanding and evolving with all things related to birdsong and with the larger vortex of offerings and content over at medicinepath.net. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I'll leave it at that for now, and I'm trusting that this listening was and will continue to be as fruitful as birdsong on morning wind. I'm your host, Kayuda Kiora. Blessings on the path forward, and we will connect again in the next episode. Until next time, all our relations.